Running is something that we have all tried at some point in the drive to be healthier. Which makes sense, right? It's accessible, it's great for your health, and something that you see people do every day. Plus, if you've ever seen middle and long distance running at the Olympics, you know it's an exciting sport to watch. Think of the sprint finishes and the amazing raw fitness of these athletes. It's probably inspired you to get out there and do some running yourself. You would think that this would make it one of the biggest sports in the world to watch, yet you ask the average person on the street if they watch any running competition, or to name 3 runners, and they have no idea. Maybe if they live in my country of Great Britain, they could say Mo Farah, or if they've seen the news, Kipchoge. At first I thought this was because of a lack of viewership in major athletics events, but no, when you think about the Olympics, it has billions of people worldwide watching. The Eugene 2022 World Championships garnered 18.7 million views across platforms, yet no one knows who these elite athletes are. I think the main problem lies in the marketing for the major races and the personalities in these races. The lack of marketing by the governing bodies makes it hard to remember or get invested in an athlete's story. Viewers rarely have a reason to support someone except if they're from the same country, and if people can't get invested in the races and the race, then the event as a whole isn't memorable. And to fix this, I want to suggest a change to how athletics bodies should be marketing their athletes, and marketing the races in general. I believe this would lead to higher viewership, better pay for athletes, and more people being exposed to the sport as a whole. As the big man says, it would allow us to create a running world. I want to take the example of the UFC, which if you don't know is a major company that manages mixed martial arts fights. And their excellent marketing for the fights and the fighters themselves is what I believe has given them such success the past 10 years. They are masterful at building stories for each event to get fans excited for the continuation of the storyline. Let's take the best example of this, the UFC's highest selling pay-per-view by a mile. Conor McGregor vs Khabib Nurmagomedov. These fighters were heavily marketed individually based on their achievements as fighters in previous bouts. Conor McGregor was marketed with his knockout power, the first 2 division champ, always talking trash, KOs over elite competitors in the sport such as Jose Aldo, Eddie Alvarez and Chad Mendes. He was making his anticipated return after a long absence. During this absence, his opponent Khabib has been mauling every opponent in his path and has claimed the lightweight championship title. Khabib was kind of marketed as this mysterious, undefeated wrestler from the mountains of Dagestan. He dominated everyone in his path, never lost a round, and never even bled in the cage. As we can see, the UFC built up the individual personalities of these fighters, and it naturally leads the viewer to wonder, who's going to win if they fight? Spoiler alert, Khabib smashed him. Then the promotion talked about their relationship. What do these fighters think about each other? What's their history between each other?
That I'm gonna put him back to box. I'm gonna put him.
You look at the press conferences where McGregor is constantly trash-talking Khabib, insulting his family, his religion. He even threw a dolly at Khabib's team bus. And then we see how furious Khabib is in the promotional videos. He vows to smash Conor. They hate each other through and through. Who is going to settle the beef? These are the questions that the marketing poses to the viewer. 2.4 million people tuned in to find out, and bearing in mind they were paying a hefty pay-per-view price. With many of these running events, it's free or half the amount that the UFC pay-per-views cost. The UFC does this with every single fight and has excellent ways of marketing this. Promotional videos, fighters going on talk shows, social media, posting the fighters' previous fights on YouTube, a documentary series before the fight to hype them up, televised press conferences. All this builds up hype for the fighters and the fights itself and gets people interested in watching. What's going to happen when these guys fight? They now know the story of these fighters and also their personal lives because of the documentary series. This gets them invested in the storyline. They care about tuning in. If we're being honest, 99% of the people do not care or understand the nuances of Khabib's wrestling, or can fully comprehend a technical chess match of boxing, me included. What we really want to see is a good fight and the storyline behind that fight. And if we apply this to running, very few people really want to watch someone run around in circles for half an hour, or on a road for 2 hours. They want an exciting sprint finish, and if we give them one, a good storyline behind the race. The problem is that these athletic commissions don't spend nearly enough resources on marketing the race and the races as well as they could. That's why the average Joe can't tell you who Jakob Ingebrigtsen or Josh Kerr are, despite them being the cream of the crop, top of the top athletes. The only people who are really excited about upcoming races are already fans of running and know the history of the races, so you're not really reaching many new people and bringing them into the sport. If I was in charge of the marketing for the 2024 World Athletics Champs, here's how I'd market it. I would build the races with the promotional videos, interviews and YouTube videos of the previous victories to target casual viewers. Personally, watching YouTube videos is how I got into the UFC, seeing the 3 fights of Khabib vs Conor or Michael Venom Page knockouts, and I also got my friends into UFC afterwards. The promotional videos that I would make would be something along these lines.
He has time to look behind him. 20 years of age, and he is on top of the world. He's so young, so composed, and so confident.
Look at this from Jakob Ingebrigtsen. He's beaten the Olympic champion over 10,000 metres. He's beaten the Olympic champion over 5,000 metres.
And here he goes! The crowd are on their feet. Here's the
the Olympic champion, the world indoor record holder, multiple European champion. This is the title he wants. Jake Whiteman, is this his best chance of a global medal?
To the home straight with Jake Whiteman trying to win it here. He's making a real big effort. Jake Whiteman has got half a yard. He could become the world champion. He's got to stay strong, and he is going to do it! Gold for Jake Whiteman.
I just can't believe I'm world champion, it's crazy. I don't see the point in starting a race and not putting yourself in a position to try and win it.
I'm very disappointed. I'm better than silver.
1-5 for Great Britain, Josh Kerr.
Well, here is Josh Kerr, the Scot, but here the outstanding favourite, the world #1, Jakob Ingebrigtsen. On the left, it's Ingebrigtsen on the right. The title is between these two men. Kerr is going for gold for Great Britain, and Ingebrigtsen is starting to hurt.
This will be an incredible upset, and it's going to happen again. Ingebrigtsen loses again. Favourites don't always win, because these are the moments that inspire greatness from everyone else. And just as Jake Whiteman did 12 months ago, Kerr has followed in his footsteps.
When the pacemakers drop out, I'm the pacemaker. I like to run fast and I like to win. There was no tactical decision. There was no sprint finish. I was just better. I think if I was healthy, I would have won by 100 meters. He was just the next guy.
You know, I know he won that 1500 title. He can be disrespectful to me, that's fine. I still have the World Championship gold medal, and I'm going to be a world champion for the next 2 years regardless of his comments.
I've given up so much to get to this point.
Whiteman is moving away, and that is a massive new personal best for Jake Whiteman.
I never really gave up the confidence that I had the ability to be able to get to this point.
With the marketing of the individual races done, I'd then focus on the relationship between each other, holding interviews and press conferences with all of them and allow them to interact with one another so the audience can see the dynamic between them.
A little bit faster, so. And promise, just stick to me as long as you can and we'll get yourself in the
And they're already slightly doing this. I mean, Josh Kerr has been on a podcast recently throwing some shade at Ingebrigtsen, saying that he's always coming up with excuses. And Ingebrigtsen has a kind of natural confidence and arrogance, you could say, in his interviews because he is so used to winning and coming first, it's the only thing that he'll be satisfied with. If you clip these and put them on the internet and then host more interviews to allow them to kind of beef a little bit more, it's going to bring much more eyes to the sport. And I don't think this can only be done with the 1500 meters. Think of the storm that Kelvin Kiptum has put in the marathon. You could create a Kipchoge versus Kipton rivalry there. Or think of the dominance of Faith Kipyegon in all of her events. You could market her as being unbeatable. Is she going to be able to continue her streak like a Floyd Mayweather type thing? And with so many of these athletes coming from impoverished backgrounds in rural Africa, and often having to balance training with working hours on a farm, there's so many great stories that you can tell to bring eyes to the sport. If you do all of these things, the sport gets bigger, the athletes get more pay, and the executives get more bonuses. So it's a win for everyone. Now, I don't want to pretend that this marketing style hasn't led to issues in the UFC with people taking it too far to market the fight. A more modern example can be Colby Covington abusing his opponent Leon Edwards' dead father, which caused a clear reaction from Leon Edwards. We should not try and force enmity between these runners just because it leads to better marketing, because apart from being wrong to encourage it, it would also just turn the sport into a circus, and people would eventually see through this kind of manufactured beef between the runners, which would have a negative impact on people's view of the sport itself. Instead, we should give the runners more chance to give their opinions on each other through interviews and press conferences and emphasize the stuff they say about each other. But we'd need to have clear guidelines about this, like, don't insult other people's family? We can allow for competitive trash talk, but when you start personally insulting each other, that's where we should draw the line. I also think these guidelines will be slightly less necessary than in the UFC, because racing is a lot less confrontational than a fight is. And if we do all of these things, I genuinely think that running can become one of the biggest sports in the world. Because right now, the amount of attention it gets is not enough. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments your thoughts. This is one of these hot takes that I've kind of had in my mind and I just wanted to make a video about it. But thanks very much for watching, make sure you leave a like and subscribe, and happy training.